beer o'clock where I am, so I can't do the whiskey this early, but I can do the beer.
I came in case there are questions that Andrew can't answer. I'm sure there's
Good.
some of those. Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, I don't want to leave you alone. So how do we do this? We start with the question thing. This is by the way, this is designed so that you don't go ask Andrew nerdy questions on Mondays.
Monday is not for nerdy, and it's never questions for me. It's got to be questions for the people who are on.
Exactly.
So Andrew does his talk show where he's inviting all kinds of interesting people on Mondays, and then today you guys can get totally nerdy and ask him 1,000 questions about the rear bus.
Great.
Below the video down here ish is a ask a question area. So put your questions in there, and then upvote your favorite questions from other people as well. The ones that have the most votes show up at the top, and it makes it really easy for us to filter those for Andrew. Next to that, there's a poll section, so we'll be putting in various fun little polls as we go on here. So put your questions in, and let's dive in.
All right. So how do you want to do this, Andrew?
I don't know. I guess you'll ask me questions.
Okay, I'm going to ask you questions. Sounds
right.
Good. You ready? Here's a question. Yeah. I voted 9 times, so they really went up 9 times. So in your early career, Andrew, was there a specific turning point where you realized, hey, my mixes don't suck? Where you realized they stood up to other mixes you respected? Where did you find the self-assurance to be confident in calling yourself a mixer? In this age of hyper-comparison, I find it can be easy to be extra hard on yourself. By Will Kubley.
Well, I mean, in a way, I'm still waiting for that moment. I still struggle on every single mix I do. But it sounds, I'm not trying to do this to be self-deprecating and things, but it's absolutely true. I panic every time I send a mix. Every time, even if it's the 5th song on an album and I've been sending the songs one by one, I still panic when I send it because I think I suck. And I feel like someone else could do better. And I think part of it is just we do something where there's no right answer. So you can't say, oh, I've solved it. It works now. There's no such thing as that. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to get in your own little sonic universe where you think it's working, but other people listen to it and like, what? And it doesn't make any sense to them.
Yep.
And there was another part of it that now I've already forgotten, but it's really difficult. But at the same time, so the other part of it is when I start working on a mix, I always get this picture in my head of how I want it to be. And I have never achieved that. I've never even gotten close. I want every single moment to be pairs standing out, and it never is. It never is. Every once in a while, there'll be like a moment where the sub bass comes in and it's like, ooh, that actually feels how I wanted it to be. But it's at the expense of the vocals, or, there's always something. So this version that's in your head never comes out. So it's always just how close can I get it?
Yeah. Same exact thing.
So I think if you have the confidence to not feel like that, you're probably not going to do very well because it means you're not going to really push yourself because you think you're awesome.
And you're not going to, you're not going to question the result. You're not going to try and do better next time. And also, I don't know how to explain. There's a moment where you feel confident that what you send is good. There's a moment there, and it cannot come up. It can't come from outside. At least for me, it can't come from outside feedback, because often the time, I don't know about you, but the outside feedback you get is preposterous. So it's like the feedback you get, you're like, what are they listening on? And so it's easy to isolate yourself and say, they're crazy.
Well, see, but I don't even go that far. I feel like, well, what am I listening on? Do I need to change everything? Like, how have I managed to make them hate it this much? But the thing you said at the beginning of that, which is actually really important, is before you send the first mix, there is no feedback from outside. It has to come from within, and you have to get to the point where you feel other people should listen to this. And I don't think very often I feel like, well, this is done. It's like, well, now I need input from the artist to be able to finish it. But you have to get it to a certain point before you can send it. And that is brutal. absolutely brutal for me every time. Every time.
I just dealt with it while we were in the green room. I was sending the first mix for a project, and because of the broadcast, it was a little rushed, you know. Not the mix, because the mix was yesterday, but I didn't get a chance to listen to it fully before I sent it out. So I didn't get that moment. Yeah.
But for me, I would love the fact that I know for at least the next hour and a half, I can't look at the feedback.
Right. Yep.
So now you've got this little moment in time where you've done a mix that you think is good, and nobody can tell you otherwise. So for an hour and a half, you're an absolute fucking genius.
Yeah. Well, it felt pretty good this morning. We'll see what happens when she writes back. But that's the thing, is like, there's no right or wrong answer. It's a taste thing.
Yeah.
So as long as you're happy with it for yourself at that moment, or happy enough to be able to let it go, then you're there. So the answer to the question is, you have to build your taste to a point where you can reach a point where you know that you're satisfied with it.
Yeah.
Without comparing it to something else.
Yeah, and that it's a moving target even within yourself, because I can get mixes to where I know they feel good, and then I'll send it out and I'll get the comments back, and they're like, it all feels really dark, like really dark, and then I listen to it and like, holy shit, like there's nothing going on above 8K in this mix, but it feels awesome, but it can't live in that sonic world, like it absolutely can't. And I'm in the middle of a record right now where I almost kind of had to start over. I had to completely restructure. It's the first record I've done in 15 years where the rear bus is not working. It's off. It's like crazy town. And nothing's changed since 2 weeks ago, but this context is so different. It's just not working. So yeah, you have to build up the confidence, but I think it's also, there's no shortcut. And I think that it's good to doubt yourself because it pushes you. At the same time, you want to get enough self-confidence that you don't get suicidal when you get the mixed notes. It's like, well, I can fix this. I'm listening through somebody else's ears. You're even allowed to disagree. That doesn't mean you can't do the mixed notes. You are allowed to, but you can't think like, well, I've got these plugins and let's go, and now I'm a great mixer. It's a constant evolving thing.
Yeah. There's something that happened for me over time is, first, you fail at things sometimes. Well, not you, of course, but me, of course.
Oh, I do.
So I remember I remember doing thinking I was totally crushing it for some mixes with some way back. Like I would be doing a mix for Mark Ronson. We were studio mates, and I felt like I crushed it, right? And then Mark would say, I'm not sure. And I was like, I'd be listening to it and I'd be like, oh wow, what the fuck is he talking about, right? And then Russ would get the mix and do it at Electric Lady, and I was doing it on my laptop and on a desktop on the tiny little thing because I was just starting. And then Russ would get the mix, and then I would listen to Russ's mix and be like, I hate that. But that's the mix that Mark would pick, and I'd be like, fuck. And then after a while I realized, oh well, it's not about me, it's about what they want first. Because it's not my record, it's his record. Second, if you basically, there's a point where you have to decide if you trust who you work with or you don't. So I'm working with a team right now, and they're all great. They're really great. The way they communicate is not necessarily exemplary. So the mix notes can be a little bit like, what? But because I decided to trust them, because I like their artistry, I have to basically take a leap of faith and tell myself, okay, I would never do this. This is really dumb, but let's try to see. And then it usually comes out great because it's something I wouldn't do. But there's the crazy things you don't want to do because that's not what you're supposed to do. So there's this balance between what you know is great, what's great art, what could be a stupid idea, what is a great idea, feedback that makes no sense, feedback that makes sense, and all that. There's no yard to measure it by. So how do you stop? When do you know? I think that's what people are having a hard time with.
Yeah.
Not having, because everybody here is a nerd, right? Everybody who's a nerd, please raise your hand in the chat. So we all being, at least I grew up in France on the notion that it's very Cartesian. You know, if there's a question, there's an answer, and you should be able to measure everything if you want to talk about it. But you can't. You can't measure quality of a mix.
Yeah.
That's what makes it fun too. Oh, I see we have a bunch of nerds. So that's the thing. I think that's why, because I suppose you get that question a lot. I get that question a lot. How do you know you're done? How do you know that your mix is good? You don't know.
I mean, you don't know that it's good, and you don't know that it's what people want. But before you send the first version of the mix, it has to be something that and I this is when I'm talking to students all the time. Basically, you need to be able to write an email to the person you're sending the mix to that just says, hey, here's a mix. If you need to explain anything about the mix, then for yourself, you're not done.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter if you feel like it's a failing in the production or the recording or the whatever. It doesn't matter. You have to either fix it for yourself or say, this is obviously something I just don't get, so it must be fine the way it is. But either way, you say, well, the reason the chorus isn't happening is because of this. So that's when you know you're done, when you would be fine to send the mix out and you will own it. And then if the notes are like, this is horrible, you have to assume it's either something you just missed or it's an aesthetic difference or whatever, and you can start working towards what they actually want. But yeah, that's the only way you know, is if you can listen all the way down and you wouldn't change anything, then you can send an email that says, hey, here's a mix.
I think that's a good answer.
I think it's a huge mistake to get a mix like 80% or whatever the hell that means, and then send it, because you don't want to, you know, waste a lot of time finishing something in a way that they're not going to want or whatever. You have to assume that nobody has any imagination and they're just going to react to what they hear, which is what everybody does. And they need to hear what you intended them to hear.
Most famous word. Oh, I can listen through a demo. Never.
No.
Nobody can listen through a demo.
Really, really good producers listen through demos, and that's why they're really, really good producers. But that's it.
I met two of those who can listen through a demo. So that was great. So I'm just going to go by the upvoting, right? We should just go.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Hello, Andrew. I think this one's for you. Your template that is on Puremix is a few years old. Oh, this is going to get nerdy. For example, you no longer use compression on the mix bus.
Correct.
You know you updated. Somebody's watching. We know you frequently.
About 6 months at least. Yeah.
But is it possible to make a more current template available?
No.
Nope. Your response may be that you may want to explain what your current template. Whoa, this just disappeared on me. I marked it something.
I just marked it as answered. So if you go to the answered area, and just throwing in a little plug here that there may or may not be another video coming out about your mix bus.
Okay.
There's stuff.
Yeah. Laura is awesome. Okay.
Thank you. Well, I think Laura is awesome too. Thank you very much.
So I'm not going to answer for you, but guys, we are always updating content. It takes a while. We just shot, how many videos did we shoot last time I came to see you?
I don't remember. It was 12, a lot.
15?
At least. And that was in December.
Yeah. So there's
updated.
If you have requests, there's a place on Puremix where you could put requests, and we'll be delighted to, we make this for you. So tell us what you want, and we'll make it happen. We have some pretty cool videos coming. So,
I mean, I'd say fundamentally, the thing that's changed the most in the template is the fact that I don't use a bus compressor anymore. And I haven't for a couple of years now. I got sick of the sound of it. And, everything you do has a good and a bad side. There's nothing you can put on that's just like, oh, that's better. Like, well, yeah, it's made that thing better, but it's changed that thing or whatever. And the compression, I was just fighting it too much, so I finally got rid of it. I've changed to the newfangled audio Elevate is the limiter at the end of my mix bus, but otherwise none of that's really changed. And like I said before, I'm in the middle of mixing an album right now where the rear bus doesn't work at all. and it's the first time in so long that I've had to mix without it that I probably will use it less and less, and it will probably go away. And I'm shocked it stuck around this long, to be honest, because I've gotten sick of everything else.
I have a question about that. I think what would be helpful is, how did you identify that rare burst or anything didn't work for you?
So the way I've always described it is, what you get out of it that's a plus is you get the interaction between the instruments. So the shared parallel compression means that whoever is loudest controls everybody else. So you need less automation for things to come through. You don't really have to ride everything. The dynamics within the performances actually kind of help mix the song, because if that guitar gets a little bit louder, it pushes everybody down. And then as soon as it's quieter again, then the piano comes up or whatever it is. So in a way, even though it's with compression, because it's parallel, it sort of accentuates the performance, the dynamics within the performance. And that's awesome, because you can get to a sort of exciting balance much faster that way. But it makes the mix much more dense. And I don't even care about level. I mean, yes, it makes the mix louder, but who cares? Your peak level is exactly the same. RMS is louder with it, but it makes it more dense, and things are blurred together more. There isn't space around individual things. And the album I'm mixing right now just has too many things, and we just couldn't hear them all. And it was kind of collapsing. The mix was collapsing under its own weight.
Right.
And I thought, well, I can just pull everything down and still get the benefit of it. And I just couldn't. It was just destroying everything. So part of it is the fact that this is a very dense record, and so that's why. But part of it is I am finally actually getting a little bit sick of it. Just sick of the density of it and the unnaturalness of it. And the same with my my Vocal Crush, which is an 1176 all buttons in. And it's this great like energy fader. But I'm starting to hate it, because every time I bring it up, I get this great energy, but I'm losing some of the natural sound of a person's voice. Because the more you practice, the less natural it is. And emotionally, you respond to that. And so I'm just, I don't know. It's just taste. My own taste is going through like a seismic shift right now. Because usually it's little, like my save as and the templates are usually small things. I build a reverb for one song, like, ooh, that's really cool. When I found Elevate, oh, cool, put that in. So that's my save as. Like I build a cool effect, I swap out something, I subtly change something. But now, I mean, the rear bus was the gigantic building block of all of my mixes. And I think it's going away.
See, that's the thing is, which is why I tell a lot, this is great. It's based on taste again, which means the whole thing is about building taste. Watching Puremix or interacting with other people is, I came to see you in December. I saw you using that limiter, and I was like, I don't know this limiter. And I listened to it with you, and I was like, oh, it sounds interesting. So I came back, and then I used it for a few songs, and then I hated it, so I got rid of it. And then I brought it back on for the last 3 songs. So because I saw Andrew use it, it made me want to use it, and it made me add this string to my taste strings. And then it took me a while to process, and now I know what it does, and so I use it for certain things, and I still use the aux for other things.
And to go back to the first question a little bit, you know you've leveled up, or whatever you want to call it, when you can say, I saw Andrew use that, it sounded great there, I'm going to try it. No, I don't fucking like that. And then it goes away. You keep it cataloged in your head, and you're smart enough to think at some point when you don't like the limiter you're using, you know, well, let me try that again. And maybe it's grown on you or whatever. But the ability to say definitively, objectively for you, don't like it.
And also it was very interesting, because I was like, well, maybe it's something I don't know, because when Andrew used it, it sounded great. So I was like, fuck it, I'll go back to the Sonox. And then I put the Sonox on, and I was like, okay, it's good, it's fine. I delivered, clients were happy, finished the record. And then the next record, which is the 2 new Lolo Zouai singles, I was like, you know what? I like the fact it did that other one did this. And it didn't work for my French record, and maybe it's going to work for Lolo. So I put it on the Lolo records, and I just got my first mix note from Lolo for this song, and it's the first time she says, I have no changes, mix 1.0, which never happens. So maybe maybe it's a good thing, that elevate thing.
Also, you realize, I mean, especially a bus limiter, it's the last thing your bus goes through. Everything about what you're feeding it matters. And so you're going to be subtly adjusting because you're listening to the limiter. So what's going into the limiter will change to feature and focus on what the limiter sounds like. And you've got to get to that point. That's what you got to do.
And that again, that's just taste. That's it.
Yeah, but be able to recognize your own taste and to actually trust your own opinions about things. And because if somebody, I mean, look, even now, if I find out that Chad Blake does something, I will just do it. Everything he does is genius. But I also have to realize that 80% of it doesn't work for me because I can't hear through his ears, and the source material isn't what he would be sending into it. So,
it's everything is that's why like the mimicking thing doesn't work. What works is and which is why we do all the Puremix videos that way, is why is it done this way? If it's why is the key.
And also, like, how genius was it on Monday when we were talking to Joe Barisi, and we were talking about that first Queens record, and they're out at Rancho de la Luna, which is legendary now. Everybody wants to go out there and make records and whatever, and he's talking about going out there with those guys, and he couldn't get the sounds he was hearing in his head, so he bailed. He basically quit on the first Queens of the Stone Age record. Like, are you fucking kidding me? But it's because he couldn't get what was in his head to come out of the speakers, and he knew, and he trusted himself enough, and he had the balls, basically, to just say, this is not happening.
Yep. That's pretty awesome. I love that. I thought that was great. And that, again, goes back to taste, because not able to get the sounds you have in your head means you have to have a sound in your head. And that means that you test to the point. You could say, okay, I can hear this in my head. So that's everything. Plus 2 dBs at 60 hertz on the bass drum, fuck that. I see a lot of people who are making really good records who have no clue what they're doing technically, no clue. But they know when to stop. They know when to stop. Like so they're happy.
And absolutely.
Yep, absolutely. Here's a question for you, Andrew. How do you manage mixing on headphones and with the ear fatigue problem? Like, how do you manage those two?
Well, I mix quite a bit on headphones because I actually like it now. I just do. And is now the time to talk about all that, or?
We have a video coming out with
look, you're wearing your studio on your head, and sometimes that's a really good thing. But I'm curious, because I've seen this sort of question before, where why would your ears get more fatigued on headphones than from speakers? It's just about the level and how much you're hammering your eardrums and the little bones inside. I mean, if you listen really loud on speakers all day, you'll be just as fucked as if you listened on headphones. I would imagine listening on in-ears the whole time, because you're physically actually stressing out your ear canal, like that could probably get uncomfortable. But just the ear fatigue of listening, I don't think it's any different. And I listen, whether it's speakers or headphones, I either listen really loud at the beginning or every once in a while to check something, or I'm listening really, really quietly. So 90% of the time, I'm like one click up listening on headphones, which is the same as one click up listening on speakers, except now when my chair squeaks, it doesn't bother me. When my cat meows, it doesn't bother me. When a door slams, I don't even hear it because I've got the headphones on. So is there something inherent about headphones that's more fatiguing than speakers, other than just the physical wearing of them?
No, I think, I'm being summoned. Here's what I think about that. I thought about that, as you know, because I think about things. The problem with headphones is you don't really have the same sense of loudness as you do with speakers. And I've noticed that with myself. So you have a tendency to creep levels up on headphones a lot more, and you don't have a meter, and you don't have a way, you have no physical way of knowing. So I found a way, for me, the way I do it, especially since I'm here in quarantine, in a room that I don't know, and I'm churning out a mix a day. And so I don't really have time to screw around. It has to be great. This is the way so I mix on headphones quite a bit. Actually, I mix with those things. Hold on. These guys. What you
Right,
just said you should do. Yeah. The little forecast, I love them. So the way I do is I have this fucker. The SPM meter. Yeah, there you go. I have this, and I listen on the speakers. I'm using the key speakers here, and I mix on those, and I mix at a level that I'm comfortable, and it's not going to kill me, like 85, right? And then when I put my earbuds in, I make sure that it feels the same as the loudness. So I have an absolute loudness because I can measure it. Even if I've been mixing for the last 12 hours and my ears have to have, atrophied a little bit, I will listen on speakers. I will make sure that I'm at 85, and then I'll put my earbuds in, and I'll make sure it doesn't feel louder. And that way I know I'm not blasting myself. But I've noticed, we love music. So, and music is fun when it moves you, right? With earbuds, it doesn't move you as much as with headphones. And so, with speakers. And so I've found myself a tendency to work louder on headphones. So this is the way I've made sure that I don't do that.
Well, see, like I said, I work really, really quietly a lot of the time. And I think, and that's important to me on speakers too, to listen really quietly. I mean, some people work at a fixed level all day, like Chad is another one. I think he's at 80 or 85, and he's there all day. It never. That doesn't work for me. Because you get to the point where you're like, well, it doesn't feel as good as it did 20 minutes ago. I would turn it up to make it feel as good. So I don't let myself do that. I listen way over 85 for a bit, and then I'm listening really, really quietly. But I'm just not I'm not worried. If your ears get tired, what happens quickly is the top end goes away. But it's just like my brain gets tired before my ears do because I listen so quietly most of the time. And when you listen quietly, you can perfectly assess pitch, performance, balance, groove, but also the impact. If those drums are not slamming, listening ridiculously quietly, then they're definitely not slamming when you listen loud. That's just air.
Yeah. Listening quiet is a beautiful thing for all the things you said. And there are standards for that. And you don't do standards because you have the experience in
or I'm an idiot and I should do them. But
I'm like Chad. I'm at 79, 80 most of the day. I bring it up to 87 to check out the bottom. But when it's at 79, that's when you know the most when what the balances are. You can't really judge. I can't judge the bottom at 79. I can judge if the balance is good, but I can't judge if the 60 is going to be good because I don't really hear it, at least not on these speakers or not on these things. But for the rest of the stuff, it's awesome. There are two people in the room, in the chat room, who I think we should bring on, who would have a good, who could chime in on recording mixing levels. So if Mark could bring our guests up, that would be awesome. It's a surprise. Let's see. People, yes, a surprise to them. People who spend their day.
Well, what about Alan?
Yes, Alan would be good. And then Steve also. Steve chimed in that maybe 85 is too loud. And here's somebody who mixes. Vance, you mix at 79 SPL every day, right? All day long?
Oh, I mix pretty quiet, man.
Oh, no, you don't.
No, I track loud.
Oh yeah,
I track super loud all the time.
Yeah,
overdubs, quiet, but
guitar overdubs are hard for me because I try my best to put the guitar player right next to me, and so that's kind of
I can't be in the room when Vance tracks. I can't. I'm too much of a pussy. Like I don't.
We should say that the two times you've been here around tracking, you were literally, your head was right above my APCs. And then the second time, you're right next to the big, to that thing with the 18 and So I get it.
It changed the body chemistry. It changed my body chemistry. I came out of there and like my blood count was different. So when you mix, how loud do you mix?
Well, I would say I would say somewhere between 75 and 80, and lower. I do 3 stages. So rock and roll stage, sort of normal stage, and then a super low stage. And I actually have them on my Avocet. I have little red Sharpie marks, and those, there's one on the Avocet, like kind of, when you turn the knob, it's like, it's off to on. Like here, there's 2 dots, and that's the no past. Even though we have had a couple parties, I have done that. But
yes,
yeah. So, but I'm usually not in here. Then it's other people. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There's I only work with speakers that don't go loud, so I'm pretty protected by the fact that if I turn them up, they distort. So the SM9s they're lovely, but they're not designed to be loud.
Right.
And these new key speakers, also lovely, not for hip hop. So it's speakers for engineers. Yeah. So I make sure that I don't blast.
I got rid of my 25s because they couldn't get loud enough for me. And I tried the 45s. I didn't like those, but I tried some synths, and they were pretty all right. The late Norman Druce built these speakers of mine, and they're pretty awesome.
I love them.
Babs heard them.
Yeah, they're great.
They're big, and they're there's no EQ, there's no fancy digital equalization or anything. It's just a DBX crossover, a pair of Crown amps, and some drivers in a black box that looks like a 604.
Yep.
So,
they are amazing, and they also can change your red blood cell count, so it's nice.
They can definitely. Yeah, I can definitely do that. Every time I think I've got a pretty happening mix, I just put on like a spike stint mix through these speakers, and I just wither away into my cocoon and start over. Something like that. This just sounds so awesome. Hey, Andrew, you talk about headphones. I've actually had to cut a couple records lately on headphones, and that's been an interesting sort of deal in the room with the band. On open back headphones, the Focal listens. So I'm, 12 foot from the drummer with headphones on, and I just got the headphones up just slightly louder, just, to bring it a little closer to me. But, we're having conversations, we're talking. It's pretty good. It's pretty great. It works.
Yeah, I've had to do a couple records like that. Like the Weezer Red album, all that tracking that we moved into the Civic Center in Santa Monica, and it was just a concert hall, and they had a control room, but it was like up 2 flights of stairs and around the corner, and it was a video camera to the stage, so you couldn't talk to anybody. And after the first day, I said, fuck that. And they had a Midas front of house desk, and I put a pair of speakers on it, and we listened on headphones while we were tracking, and then they'd wander out into the seats, and we'd crank it up and listen back on the speakers, and it was great. Because, you kind of know what the hell's going on, right? When you hear the kit and you're set up and the mics and the pre's and you tweak it, you listen back, you maybe tweak a little bit more, and then you're cool. You're not really, you're listening at that point anyway, right? You're listening for performance, and you're not worried about 10K on anything at that point.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I just did was weird because I was in this big barn, and I'm recording 60 tracks at once, right? And recording every instrument that could possibly be played at any given time, for these super long songs. And I just did everything the reverse of what I would normally do, and that is I didn't use a lot of EQ. I didn't use any compression, and I basically got a balance somewhat in my headphones, sort of, and then I just hit record and wrote down times, and hey, this 12 minutes is pretty good. This 12 minutes is great. This 18 minutes wasn't so good. Let's do that one again. For an hour.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Do what you got.
4 days of recording. 4 days of recording. 1.4 terabytes of data.
Nice.
Amazing.
4 days of recording.
Very good. All right. So I have we have a one guest limit because of the limitation of this fantastic platform. So I'm Vance. I'm gonna kick you out of the camera. Thanks for chiming in.
Cheers, fucker.
Cheers, fucker. I'm having coffee. I'm actually working today. So
Yeah.
Coffee.
But I'm waiting on mix notes, and the mix note was, hey, we need to put more instruments on that. We don't know how to do it. We're going to come back to this. All right.
That's a good mix.
I'm done for the day. Done for the day.
Nice one.
I'll be listening. All right, man.
Thanks, Vance. So we have someone else who knows a lot about mixing with levels in mind. And I'm asking for that person to be invited. Alan, you should be up soon. Mark, can you bring Alan up? That would be awesome. This is why this platform's good.
Oh, holy shit. Chris is in here too. Chris Shaw.
Oh, Chris. Awesome.
Chris Shaw just came in. I saw Greg Wells hanging out in there, and Alan is now connecting.
He's not connecting. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Like magic. We'll do a
Chris,
Scooby-Doo transition.
Guys, if you guys were not watching yesterday, Chris Shaw, who's an awesome mixer, tracking engineer, and awesome human, had a long chat with Mark on record making. And you should go watch it. It's in the replays. I was actually mixing and watching at the same time, which is a really interesting experience because I had a deadline. It got really interesting when they started playing the Nada Surf stuff over my, pop song. It was cool. So yeah, watch the Chris thing. I think Vance is having a problem logging in. Alan, sorry. Hold on. Maybe Mark can tell us what's going on. Mark, your microphone.
That's me. I'm not Alan. Let's see. So while he's doing that, maybe let's do another quick question.
Yeah.
Sure.
Or maybe you can bring Steve up because Steve just shouted that 85 is loud. I want to know what he means. Steve Genewick, are you
okay. All right. Alan says it's not letting him set his mic and his camera. Alan, I'll try and message you about that.
But let's bring Steve Genewick here. I want to know what that 85 is loud stuff.
Okay, cool.
First, I want to see Steve. I haven't seen Steve in how long? How long have you seen Steve in person? Since you've seen Steve in person, Andrew?
Well, I'm sure Steve will correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure I saw him at NAMM. But maybe it was last year at NAMM.
No, I don't think Steve came to NAMM.
Well, he's going to correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, if this works.
I barely.
Steve's accepted and is connecting.
Okay, cool. Very nice. I'll text it to.
Okay.
Scooby-Doo.
It is kind of fun to just keep making it do this.
Hey,
Steve.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, Andrew, how are you?
Let's clear this up first. Were you at NAMM this year? Did I not see you?
I was at NAMM. Yeah. We were doing our Atmos thing.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. We were talking in the lobby before your panel.
You were at the Dolby thing.
Yeah, that's my new life. Dolby Atmos. No headphones. Right, so well, actually, we do use headphones.
Are you doing it at home now?
Actually, I am. When this whole thing went down, I've always had a little mix room, but when this whole thing went down, to keep working, we moved the furniture out of the living room and I set up a full Atmos system.
My goodness.
So I don't have overhead speakers, so I'm kind of guessing there, but nothing I do will get sent out until I go to a real room and listen to it. But
right.
I'm probably 80-90% there on a couple records.
Nice, man.
Yeah,
That's
it's
amazing.
fun.
So how do you calibrate that? Like, how do you know that what you're listening to is good? Because this clearly was not designed to mix a record.
No, it's a bit ghetto.
Okay.
I put up. All my speakers don't match, but it took me a few days of calibrating, getting the levels right. I had help from friends at Dolby, and then playing back mixes. I mean, I'm lucky enough to have a couple hundred mixes I've done in Atmos to listen to.
That's nice.
Yeah,
very nice. And so, where do headphones come in that process?
Binaural. We're doing a lot of work in binaural, especially one of our other engineers, Nick. He's deep into it. So, every mix we do in Atmos, we have to do a binaural mix. There's settings in the renderer, so we have to go in and make sure that it's all good.
Down, and there you go. And I saw they've always been doing some webinars about it too. And there's some people actually will start with binaural, then blow it out onto speakers.
Yeah, we're doing experimenting to see if that's kind of a better way to go.
Who's going to listen to that? In which conditions?
Amazon is streaming it. Tidal is streaming it.
Yeah, it's streaming now.
Yeah.
So you can get a pair of any headphones and listen to a binaural mix of yours.
Yeah.
On Tidal. Okay, give me some example
of the Atmos. Yeah.
Rocket.
Yeah, I'm not sure actually what's actually been released.
Oh no,
Tidal's a decent library, and supposedly Amazon was, but maybe they're not. I don't know. They were going to, and maybe they didn't. I don't know what's going on.
To do the what? Sorry, Andrew.
Amazon was supposed to be streaming it as well, but I don't know if they are. I know Tidal is, and it's a decent sized catalog now.
Yeah, Amazon streaming also. They stream right now. They stream into their Echo Studio speaker and to the Amazon Fire TV, I believe.
Right.
So you can get it through Amazon.
So you're mixing like a 22 speaker system or whatever, some Atmos object-based stuff, and you can forgive my stupidity. I just didn't look into this, and then you can fold it to binaural, and you actually feel like your work is preserved.
Yes, I mean it's a different experience. It's not 20 speakers in a room.
The height's difficult. It always has been.
Yeah.
Actually, what's difficult is in front of you.
Really?
Yeah. It's hard to get something to appear like it's in front of you. In headphones, you kind of hear stuff here. So it's hard to get it here. But it's getting better. Literally every day it gets better.
Amazing. Every time I learn, it's been a few years, but every time I tried anything ambisonic, anything that dealt with that stuff, the phase made me want to puke, and I just gave up.
That's what we're working on.
And that's just people not being careful. It's the same with the ambisonics mixes. I've heard people who've done ambisonic mixes of their records, and they're obviously only listening on the speakers and just trusting the renderer to make it binaural, and you cannot do that.
No.
It's like one of the things in the Dolby renderer that's great is you've got 3 choices for distance. So you can place it on the walls, you can place it near you, or you can place it somewhere in between. And on the speakers, I'm sure that makes a difference, but binaural, that's got to be gigantic because it spreads and how focused it is. So there's a big difference between having something across the front or having it in the center. And in headphones, it's even more of a big deal. Like if you want your kick drum there, you've got to decide on the distance as well as the placement. So it's but they're pretty smart about it.
They're pretty smart about it, yeah.
I don't know shit. It's I just know like the manual version of it. I haven't actually done that much.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I mean, when you get into it, it's definitely the wave of the future. I like obviously a speaker system better. I think if you really want to hear Atmos, you really need to hear it on a good speaker system, and then you'll know what it is, and then you can kind of pare down into some of the smaller systems.
Yeah, but for it to be a viable thing for people, you can't. I mean, because the fact that Amazon is only streaming it to little tiny powered speakers and a television, right?
Well, that's because that's what they sell.
Yeah, but it's not the big audiophile immersive thing that the 5.1 was supposed to be when that was like, oh, that's the new format. This is
right.
It's got to be a consumer format, and that means headphones is going to be probably 80% of people.
Headphones are a big part of it. I also think we're at a time now where back in the day when we were all doing 5.1, I think the technology has caught up to where now we have wireless speakers and stuff like that. So I'm hoping that eventually you'll be able to buy, like, remember you used to be able to buy the little theater in the box 5.1 systems? Yeah. Like you'll have an Atmos system and you'll have remote speakers that you can stick on the walls and ceilings, and it will go from that to, to a pair of headphones.
I've got a Sonos thing for the TV with a sound bar that does left, center, right, and then 2 satellites in the back and a sub, and it actually sounds really good. So that's enough for me to say, let me hear some surround music. But
and there's more stuff like that coming. I mean, obviously we're privy to some of the manufacturers who are sending us stuff to evaluate and stuff like that. So I can tell you in the next year there'll be a lot more consumer systems, and it will open up in the streaming will open up to a more broad, you know, where you can use all the technology. I mean, obviously right now, Amazon was the first one in. They had this new speaker. I'm sure the deal was cut for some amount of time. It only streams into that speaker. That's, you know, that's how those things work.
That's fine. But I mean, it's easy to be very cynical about the labels chasing the new format because it's the holy grail is to resell the catalog.
Mm-hmm. But actually, you know, what's interesting is in the last few months, we've kind of switched over. So like all the records I'm mixing now are records that have not been released yet. So we're working up to doing simultaneous releases, which is really fun.
Well, and what it also is it's job security. You know, I mean, that's a hell of a lot of work for people who do what we do in an era where more people can do stereo mixes at home that don't need us and things like that. So it's, yeah, if you want to just be an engineer, that's a great thing to have, that there are going to be 20 million songs that want to be remixed.
Yeah. Not all of them work, though. It's amazing how sometimes the catalog stuff doesn't work quite as well.
I heard some horrendous 5-1 Steely Dan mixes.
Oh,
yeah.
You know, there's stuff that does not want to be split up. It's so meticulously crafted for stereo. To say that it's going to work when you explode it is
there's some legacy rock bands that you know, we've been experimenting with different bands too. So, you know, kind of have, especially the bigger name artists, you got to experiment to get them on board before you can really go at it. And some of them just don't want to be pulled apart. They work as a team, and when you take them apart, they're just like, wow, that's what's going on in that record.
Yeah.
So, you know, it just doesn't want to be pulled apart. Some of the like more R&B stuff, like I played around with some Earth, Wind and Fire stuff, and if you take the groove apart too much, it doesn't groove.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to leave it. I mean, you can still get a compelling mix, but you have to be careful.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, and that happened with mono to stereo. There are mono versions of Beatles songs where the groove is so badass, and the stereo version is cool, but it's not like Lady Madonna. Go listen to the mono version versus the stereo of that, and one of them's almost a hip hop track, and one of them's like a honky tonk silly thing.
Yeah, I remember listening to the first time I heard Pepper in mono, the original mono mixes. And I was actually with Jeff Emmerich. I was just working with Jeff at the time. And I couldn't believe how much space and how wide those mono mixes were. I mean, not wide panning, but they were just enormous and tons of space and tons of... So, you know, you can do it. You just have to be very good.
Just have to be Jeff Emmerich.
Yeah. And have the Beatles.
Well, yeah, that helps.
Yeah, put that on the list. All right. Steve, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
That's really awesome to get the perspective from you, and maybe we can try and bring Alan Meyerson up since he's in the chat, and maybe it's going to work. And then Steve, I will be seeing you next time I come to LA, or maybe you want to come nerd out with us an afternoon.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, I'll call you.
Absolutely. Okay.
All right.
Excellent.
Ciao.
Thanks, guys.
Steve.
Hold on, Mark is telling me how to.
Still here.
Mark is no longer there, so you guys can keep talking.
Andrew, no bus compression. What's going on, man? Where's the real Andrew Scheps?
It's been gone for a while. It's been gone. Yeah, I don't know. I just got sick of it.
Ever since you came to see me and Al, right?
The best way to get over a bus compressor is to properly level match the bypass to when it's in. Like, get the makeup gain, not actually hearing it louder.
Yeah,
you'll get it.
You know, it's interesting in the Atmos thing. We don't have a bus compressor,
and that's been driving
me fine.
And the rear bus stereo shared parallel thing was the other thing. Like, how am I going to do that? How am I going to do that? And now all of a sudden, like, maybe it's okay.
Yeah, I like dynamics. It's fun.
Yeah, and if you don't have to make it louder than the last Atmos record because they are actually playback streaming standards, then you don't need the compressor. You can let things breathe.
Exactly. And you don't need it because you're not jamming stuff in. If something's fighting, just move it.
Yeah. And also because nobody at the label has an Atmos system to check your work, thus not going to compare it to the loudest one, thus not going to force you to make it louder.
Yep.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Standards are beautiful. We should all have our own standards.
It was fun for the Atmos thing. I actually got to be part of the group that made the standard. I've never made a standard before.
That's awesome. Hold on. Let's see what Mark is doing. Mark, are you listening?
Mark's not listening. He's drinking. It's snowing there.
He doesn't really drink.
What's going on here? Where am I? All right. So Steve, we're gonna free up your seat and bring up Alan here.
Bye, everybody.
Well, good to see you.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for making the standards.
Absolutely.
All right. Let me see. It's Alan here, and it says that he has accepted and is connecting.
Amazing. We made it happen.
All right. Bo, I'm getting yelled at. It's awesome.
So all this started from a question about headphones. While Alan comes on, can you tell people what headphones you're using?
Sony 506s, and
506s, yeah.
And most of the time I'm using the Apollo Twin, an older one, as my headphone amp because I've gotten used to it, and because when I travel, I need it anyway, so it's just always there.
Yep. Those little twins are very practical. Those 7506s. But how do you deal with the fact that it changed tone over time?
They don't change that much over time. I mean, they get worn out, but when they wear out, it's pretty quick. Like they're fine for a year, and if you're using a lot, then they just get tired, and you notice pretty quickly.
And so, what do? You
just buy another pair off Amazon. I mean, they're cheap, and they've been making them forever.
So you buy a pair of headphones once a year.
Yeah, basically. Sometimes a little more than a year, but yeah, usually once a year. And what'll happen is I'll just start thinking that the reason I hate everything I'm hearing is because of the headphones. So I get a new pair of headphones, and then I freak out like, oh, well, hold on, these are different headphones, and now it's all going to sound different. And then 2 weeks later, I'm like, yeah, it still sounds like shit. It wasn't the headphones' fault, and I just keep working.
Yep. My friend Graham Hawthorne, the drummer, wrote me, is like, check out this mix, and I was like, what are you listening on? And so he was listening on his HD600s, which he's had, Sennheisers, which he's had forever. I said, dude, those things, especially for a drummer, because drummers, they like volume. I'm guarantee you they're fried. So he's gonna, you have to pay attention to that stuff. I changed my my HD600s drivers once a year, even if they feel right.
You got to do it's same with speakers too. I mean, why you think like some rubber and cardboard is good for 25 years? Like that's insane. You got to take care of these things. They don't last forever. The drivers are consumables, and obviously you're not going to swap drivers in a pair of headphones that cost $200. You're just going to buy another pair.
Yeah.
So
but
I get my speakers reconed. I mean, I don't use them as much anymore, so I don't have to get them done once a year. But it used to be I was reconing them once a year.
You heard it here first. Yeah, it's crazy. And then these the speakers like these guys, the keys. I'm sure, I can't even imagine how much those drivers are. I'm not going to happen.
I'm sure the modern stuff lasts longer. I mean, because like the tannoys, it's literally a cardboard cone and a rubber surround, and that's it. And the rubber dries out, and you got to redo them. I'm sure the modern stuff, because they've got so much technology in them to work with the excursion, and so they're not really getting beat up as much. Like with the tannoys, if you push them that far, they just keep going until the rubber stretches. Modern speakers all have brakes on, so it'll move as if it's going to be that loud, but then it actually clips the movement. It's basically clipping inside the speaker to keep the speaker from getting over exercised. So the speakers last a lot longer.
Yeah, but they still age. We have a bunch of SM9s at Flux because I helped design them, so I was hooked up. And they all sound, they all get different levels of use. The ones in my room were used, the ones in Dangerous a lot less because they came in later, and I can tell, besides the room difference, I can tell a difference between how they react in the bottom a little bit.
Right.
I should recone mine. It's just like, when do you have time to do that?
Yeah.
You don't really. Mark, since you're on camera, can you tell us, is Alan around or what's going on?
I think he's having some browser issues with the camera. So let's see.
Let's go for another question. Questions are great. Good questions.
You got six votes on what does the lo-fi clipper do for you? What are you looking for when you use it on kicks or snares? Oh,
hey, it's Ellen. Saved by the Bell.
Hey,
hi, Ellen.
Can you hear me?
We
Yeah.
can. Can you hear
Let me
us?
turn off my headphones because I was on wireless headphones. I actually had to go back to my iPhone. My
Nice.
computer didn't work. I don't know what happened, so sorry about that.
That's all right. How you doing?
I'm surviving this pandemic. I've got my little home studio here.
Nice.
You know, the good news is about 2 weeks before this all happened, I always had a little home studio and I had little tiny JBL speakers. And I said, you know what? I do this for a living. Let me get some decent speakers. So I called ATC. I said, make me a deal on some 50s. And they did. So I put in stereo 50s. And then right before this happened, I got a call from a Japanese client to mix a little TV show that paid me just enough to turn this room into a 5.1 room. So
Nice.
I ended up with a 5.1 room, and now here we are. It turns out to be the smartest thing that ever happened. So I'm able to do surround mixes at home now.
Awesome.
So when you mix, we brought you in because as what you do every day, you have actual standards that you have to mix to.
Right. So let me give my 2 cents about that conversation about levels. I mean, headphones are obviously a different thing for me. I'm actually an Audeze guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then as an alternate headphone listen, I have my 630s, my Sennheisers, which are a bit brighter. And sometimes depending on how tired I am. But when I'm working on a film, I literally stick with 2 levels. I have my level that is based on tuning out the room at 85. But I would say I'm not mixing at 85. I'm mixing for the louder cues. Maybe sometimes they go over 85 for the quieter cues, but it gives me my standard. And I don't change that because I find that when I start messing around with just changing the levels a few dB here and there, that it really affects the way my low end speaks in terms of the mix. And then I have a dim level, which is a level that's set, I think it's about 15 dB below, like it's 60. So that when I find myself sort of wearing out at 85, I just go to that level. And so I stick pretty much, like Vance mentioned, he had 3 levels. I basically stick with 2 levels when I'm working on a film. You know, the good news with me with film is I'm not dealing with a lead vocal, so there isn't that thing attacking me from the center, except when I turn on the dialogue, you know, so.
And so you're mixing, so you have basically a target in between level at 85. And
I know that when I'm working at that level and that I'm mixing at a level to where I'm going, this sounds like a nice full mix. And I look at my stems are, you know, at a level that is exactly or hopefully exactly where I expect them to be, so that when I deliver it to the dub stage, it's going to sit underneath their faders at the level I want them to operate with, which gives them enough room above and below where they need to ride. I don't want to mix it super hot that they're always working low, and I don't want to mix it super quiet that they're always working hot. I want to put them right in the middle of their fader throw. So I've sort of built my standard to work like that. It's a pretty standard, not to repeat words.
And so this is all derived from the new, well, not all derived, but the entire film industry was very strong and instrumental in pushing the new loudness standards, ADC 85 something, ASC 85, I forget, or EBU 128, I forget the exact numbers. And so when you deliver your stems, if your levels coming out of your speakers are at 85, where are your stems sitting at? Minus 23 LUFS?
No, they're hotter than that, but it's hard to say. You know, I'm not maybe minus 12, minus 10, something like that. Okay. At the hot stuff, but and you know, I wish I could tell you that I was up on all the standards and stuff like that, but the same way someone asked me about my Mac Pro, how do I have it built? I actually don't know, because the guy who takes care of that stuff for me knows exactly how it's built, and I am lazy when it comes to that stuff. It's built plenty powerful enough to mix music, and not like worrying about 8K video where I'd be wasting money on it. And by the way, Andrew Scheps, you're a very handsome man. I just wanted to throw that out there. Just kind of hugging you and feeling that beard, you know, it's just.
Oh gosh.
So can I throw my 2 cents in about bus mastering and bus compression a little bit?
Please.
And if Greg Wells is on this, we had this conversation very recently. You know, so I can't do bus mastering because my stems need to add up to my full mix, so that when they go back and forth between the full mix and the stems, it's the same mix. So if I get an approval on a stereo mix, that mix that they heard on their iPad is going to be pretty much equal to the mix that's going to end up on the stage. So what I've done is I've gotten into, as most everyone does in my industry, stem mastering, where my strings, my brass, my percussion, my drums, each have their own mastering. And yes, I lose the interaction between like what the lead vocal does to the keyboards and stuff like that. And there is a way to get that back with sidechain compression, but I find that to be difficult to do for a couple of reasons. One, logistically, if they change the cue and there's artifacts of compression where there's no longer the instrument creating the artifact, then it sounds fucked up. And two, I think I've gotten relatively competent at being able to mix something like that. And honestly, not that I don't do bus compression when I do stereo mixes for pop radio or something like that. Like I'm working on an album now at home and I am using a bit of bus compression. But I find that the sound, I feel like it's a more open sound and I have to work a little harder at levels. But because I have a little bit of stem compression on each individual instrument, I'm still getting the push. I'm still getting the overall kind of effect of the loudness without necessarily having to do it on one stem.
Right. And so you've got almost the equivalent of a stereo bus chain on each stem.
If I want, yes, each stem I have has whatever I decide to have. There's always going to be a limiter, which if I'm doing my job right, I'm never going to hit because I'm never going to be that hot. But that limiter, which one of the ones I use, has a little bit of a dynamic EQ built into it to kind of work with the mung in the mid-range and the harshness in the 3K range. So I'm doing a little bit of management there. And then depending on the piece of music, if it's Wonder Woman and it's an action cue, you know I'm going to smack that shit. So I'm going to be putting stuff on it. I might have an inflator on it. I might have, a more drastic EQ on it. I don't really know. The new Leapwing dynamic one, the Dyne one, whatever it is, I'm going to do that, but I'm going to do it to the individual stems. And it used to be that what I did on one, I would do on everything, but I don't do that as much anymore because, thanks to delay compensation and stuff like that, I don't have to worry about the differences in latencies. That if I want to smack the percussion, I might not necessarily smack the orchestra.
Right. And it's interesting because it means, like for me, I had shared parallel compression, which meant that would never work. But I was talking about earlier, all of a sudden, that's starting to go away. So now I could actually think about doing this. But then, like the limiter I like to use has very long latency and is a CPU pig. And if I've got to have 10 of them, like now I need a new computer.
Right. Yeah. And look, that's a reality. That's something that you have to look at when you're working in that world. Plus the fact that I'm still a fader guy. So I need to be able to, I can't have 11,000 samples of latency because then my rides don't mean anything anymore.
Yep.
So that, and I've been on Avid like a madman. It's like, figure that out. Now that you got folders, thumbs up on folders, fix that shit. You're Avid. There's got to be a way to be able to tell the fader to do the same sort of compensation necessary to get you back in the pocket when you're mixing. Everyone on this thing right now, all 5,000 of you that are listening, write to Avid today and tell them Alan sent you.
I'll call Francois after this.
He would not like me for that. Although he came to my studio one day and I showed him what I was talking about.
Man, they really wanted to make it better. They really do. They really care.
They
really want to make it better. But it's a big ship. It's hard to steer.
Yeah, Andrew. Thanks to you and Joe, parallel compression, using it as a separate fader, is something that I've learned to really embrace and enjoy.
Awesome.
We do have the advantage of now having plugins that have blending. So you can do that, but it sort of works on one level and it doesn't work on other levels. Yeah. But when I need to do that, fortunately, my computers have the horsepower to do most of that stuff. So I'll do it on something if I want it on the drums, or sometimes I do it on the orchestra. Sometimes I like to have a couple of different auxes on the orchestra with different processing. I always start with being an either or, and then I always push one up to see what it sounds like together. And I go, shit, that sounds pretty good. And now I'm doing rides between the two of them, like in the loud stuff, I'll push up the one that's got more processing on it. The quiet stuff, you know what I mean? It's just...
Yeah, because you get it all in a smaller package.
That's where Andrew Scheps changed my life.
There you go. For the better.
That,
better.
and always feeling slightly insecure about my facial hair.
Stop shaving. You're locked down. Why are you shaving?
You know, I don't like the itch. It makes me touch my face, and I don't want to touch my face.
You gotta let it go like 2 weeks.
Andrew, listen to what I said. It makes me touch my face, and I don't want to touch my face.
Well, don't leave the house, then you're allowed to touch your face.
Oh, Jesus. Don't leave the house. Anyway, it's great to see you guys. This is really a great service you're giving your people out there. I'm honored to be asked to be on with you.
Thank you
I'm
so
willing
much.
to stay as long as you want, or I'm willing to get out of here, whatever you want to do.
Stay on. I'm gonna try and figure out that 4 people limit, and then and make sure that we can have more geeks on at the same time. Stay on, Alan. Let's see if you could find a question that is.
By the way, I just got to tell you one thing. I do find myself like a 6-year-old when I'm not on, waving at the screen. I can't get out of the habit of doing that.
I do that too. Absolutely.
Oh, it's crazy.
I also do that too. Hold on, let me find a question that's relevant to the both of you. Maybe Mark can help with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Fab, I have a suggestion. If you want to try to get another person up, I could log out. You could log in with Puremix.
I'm happy to leave.
No, and then come back. But you come back as Puremix, and then we'll free up a seat. What do you think?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys chat. I'll be back. Ciao. Nice to see you.
Cool.
Kick me out.
Okay. All right. And then Andrew, I'm gonna leave you guys to chat for a moment. Do you want one of these questions, or do you want to just chat for a second?
Yeah, give us a question. So
okay.
You want.
Let's see. So, here we go. This is gonna be great. Hey, Andrew, I'm preparing my final paper for university, which is on mixing in the box. I wondered what you consider the future of mixing to be. And also, as someone who has been mixing for just over 2 years on headphones with the help of SonarWorks, is there any advice you could provide for such a setup? Future of mixing, go.
Future of mixing. You're looking at it. Alan and I are both sitting in our home in the rooms that we do all of our work. I mean,
amazing.
That's it.
Guys, I'm going to back out so Fab can come back. Sorry.
Yeah. All right. I mean, I think the tools will continue to improve and to sort of embrace this at-home single-person workflow. There's all sorts of cool, like machine learning going into the noise reduction software and stuff like that, which is really incredible. But yeah, I don't know. I think the tools will just get better and the computers will get more powerful so they can handle them.
Right.
That's it. What do you think?
I agree. I think that the level of the software that's going on now, they're able to invent things in the software environment that you could never have in the hardware world. Talking about stuff that almost is imitating artificial intelligence, things that are re-looking at their audio 100 times a second, and plugins that are dynamically controlling things based on the frequencies that are present in the material, that I find amazing. And I think that as the CPUs get faster and DSP gets easier to manage, that it's just gonna keep getting better and better. And I still love. I'll show you here. I still have a Dolby unit that I just love pumping shit through. So I have it set up on a hardware I/O, and like I'll do my drums and then I'll pump it through my Dolby unit, record it back in, realign it, and blend it in. Talk about parallel. And I have all the plugins that do that, and none of them sound like that. Okay. So I went out, I found myself one of these things, I got it repaired, and it's the only piece of analog gear I have in my entire room. And I love it. But, I think the future, you can work at home. I still have my Atmos studio in Santa Monica. This room is too small to make Atmos, but I'm mixing really good stuff here, and now my assistant can actually tap into my computer, and if I'm doing a movie, print stems on my system.
Awesome.
Which is just great. There's a plugin called it runs on a thing. It's called Team Viewer.
Yeah. Yep.
And Team Viewer, it's just like once I'm done with the mix, I text her I'm done. She goes in, she names the stems, she puts them up on Aspera, and we're off to the races.
Yeah, awesome.
So it's certainly getting easier to do all this stuff. That's for sure. The one thing is it's easier. The downside is I'm a social guy. You know, it's like I like being at my studio. It's a campus. There's people. I have lunch with friends, and they go, "Hey, could you come play guitar on my thing?" And they'll say, "Can you mix my demo?" And you know, and there's that interactivity has always been something that I've enjoyed, and I do miss that when I work at home. But it is great to be able to have the option of doing either.
Yeah. I mean, I get my, the human interaction part by going to the pub. So that's what I'm really missing now. But the working part for me, I've been working at home now for, got to be 20 years, I think, basically. And there's nothing about it that I mind. I love hanging out in studios and seeing people, but we're doing that right now. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's great.
I have never not worked in my house. Never. When I was 15 years old, I slept under whatever console I was able to buy with a loan from my grandmother. I've never, ever worked in a professional studio, or unless it was mine and I built it. I don't know what it's like. And there's one thing though. If you don't go through that system, then you don't learn the things that you learn by seeing other people, and also your network sucks. Like for example, me, I built my network by working 7 days a week, 14 hours a day, and sucking less and less.
As did me, and probably Andrew too.
Yeah, but I was never anyone's assistant. I never was into a crew. And I see all my friends, I see people around me, and they were like, their network was who they met in the studios.
Right.
And that allowed them to be connected to artists in a way that I never was up until, more recently, because some records did well by, chance. But it wasn't working in a system with other people, the emulation and the ability to be challenged and the ability to learn from other people was something I never had in suck. The beauty is I can mix in my underwear anytime. So that's nice.
Right. Yeah. I say that I love to mix in my underwear watching the Golf Channel.
Yeah. That's great. So you can mix and watch TV at the same time?
Well, as long as I have the sound off.
Look over every once in a while, check the leaderboard, Yeah,
you just sort of like, just it's kind of not really not great. I don't mix that great with the sound, but I don't mix that great anyway. So
I actually mixed and watched Chris Shaw's Puremix live yesterday at the same time. So that was really fascinating.
Unfortunately, in my world, the films I had 3 films going, and one of them left because of the logistics of it, moved to London, and one of them got postponed because they could not do it without an orchestra. And the third one that I was working on has now moved a month. So I'm actually home working on an album now that I'm not really mixing in June, but it's all recorded and ready to go. And I've just been spending my time just playing with it as like source material for me to experiment with ideas. And Fab, you had a huge effect on me when I watched your video about mixing that song that Mick Gazowski recorded. And you made me realize that I was relying on my technology way too much. And like the minute I had an idea, I went right for a plugin. So I literally took songs that I mixed and stripped them down and just started pushing up faders and thinking 1 reverb, 1 delay, 1 EQ, 1 compressor.
Yeah.
Where can I get to? And I got to thank you for that, because some of the places I got to were way better. Some of them I needed the processing, but it was a great experiment for me. I'm still doing it sort of based on that day. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. It's a lot easier when it's recorded by Mick Gazowski.
You can say what you want. It's you took 1 reverb, you took almost no delay and almost no processing, and you turned it into a record that sounded like a record.
Well, thank you. It was that the R&B song, like Jealousy. Yeah.
Yep.
I did a thing with UA for UA last week because they just launched Luna.
That's right. It was Luna. That's right.
And I just mixed that song live in Luna for the first time, sight unseen. And that he crushed the recording of that song,
as he does.
It's so good. It's like, I was there. I was producing. So, and I wasn't paying attention to what he was doing because I was trying to make the record be a record. I was like, shit, I should have paid attention. That was good. He's so good.
Yeah.
Mick is so good. We're actually gonna next Friday, Mick is gonna mix a song live right here.
Wow.
Yeah, and we're picking the song. Maybe I should give him that song. That would be awesome.
Well, it inspired me to do that, and I definitely endorse that to any young mixers out there. You got all this technology and stuff, but do yourself a favor: pick one reverb you like, one EQ you like, one compressor you like, and one delay you like. You can use multiple versions of them. That's fine, and see what it sounds like to mix a song just like that.
That it's great,
right, Andrew?
Yeah, it just forces you to listen.
That's right.
That's
what I was forgetting to do. The thing with a lot of processing I find is sometimes you start getting into this catch up with the top end. You start adding top end to so many things that you start getting this and you start catching up with everything else. So now I got to add more top end to the vocal. Well, now the bass needs top end. Well, the drums now sound a little dull. So you start losing track. And I found that it was much easier for me to keep track of what was supposed to be there. And it limited me from like sticking on yet another, why do I need 4 compressors and 4 EQs on a drum bus? I mean, sometimes I do, but the experiment was not to do that and see what I got,
The other advantage, and this is what is funny because that's what Andrew was saying earlier, is like he has his real bus for years, right? And it's so Andrew is importing his template. There's lots of those videos on Puremix, and then go at it, and your stuff is already in the rear bus. And unless you're in a position that forces you to revisit that, you just know it's going to work for you. It's worked for you every day for years.
Yeah, but there are probably 100 times when it's been there and I haven't questioned it. But if I'd gotten rid of it, things would have gone better for me on that particular mix. I've been fighting.
Exactly. And that's something that I've learned watching Mick. I like to watch everyone to try and be better. Everybody wants to be better. We all want to be better at what we do, which is awesome, and so sup, Chris? So the idea is, and I'm also trying to help people. I remember when I knew even less than I know now, and the feeling that you have in you when you don't know and you're not sure it's as good as possible, that feeling of uncertainty, which is also what Andrew discussed at the beginning. Every time I send my mix, I feel like in my first mix, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. So that feeling is a horrible feeling. I remember how it felt. And so with building Puremix, trying to explain to people how to move forward and giving them tools for being able to build their taste. One of the best ways to keep things simple. And I was talking to Greg Wells a couple of weeks ago. He asked me to connect him with Mick because he was using Mick's templates for something, and there's no bus compression. Like the bus system on Mick's template is super simple. And I remember back in the day when we were shooting the video, I was like, oh, I'm going to do that. And since then, I've tried to keep it ultra simple, because when you keep it simple, when something goes south, you can very easily know what it is. Right. If you have 2 limiters, 2 compressors, an EQ that boosts, an EQ that costs, and all that stuff, like we see a lot of people do, because it works for them, because that's their template, they've been using it for years, cool. But there's no way you're going to troubleshoot that. No way. Right. And so Mick is able to make stuff sound the way he does with almost nothing. Right. Because it's all based on his projection of what he has in his head. And I think that is the inspiration. That's why I did that in that video, is because for me, I'm a nerd. I look into everything, and I know what things do because I want to know. Okay, that doesn't mean that it's a good idea to use them all. And the simplest you keep it, the better it is.
Right, and I think we have the tendency of using our new latest greatest, acquisition. Yes. So as I get new plugins, I start using it, and I just, I think the one piece of lemonade in this fucking shit show of lemons that we have right now is the fact that, maybe, or at least for me, I have the time to sit there and go, what if I rethought this mix completely from scratch and just absolutely ignored what I just did and see what I come up with? Where would it be better? Where would it be worse?
The extra time, the theoretical extra time that this madness is giving us is being put to good use by a lot of people. Right. So it's great that you do that. Chris, how you doing? Are you recovering?
Can you hear me?
We're good.
Oh, good.
Do you guys know each other, Alan?
No.
I
got a chance to meet Andrew, like not in person, but via video chat here. I'm a big fan. I'm a huge fan.
Man, well,
I listened to your podcast on another podcast, and I won't mention names, but it was a lot of validation of what you were doing with headphones and a portable rig. Made me feel not so guilty of doing the same thing. I'm like, well, if he's doing it, then it's okay for me to do it as well. And I was listening to that podcast. It was the Gear Club one with John Yellow and
oh right, yeah.
And I was in my car and I was like pounding the steering wheel the whole time, like, yes, 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 so yeah, I'm loving it. But I'm using this time right now to like geek out on plugins I haven't touched in months or perhaps years, and just jiggering my template. One thing I added recently on my template from watching one of Andrew's webcasts was having a kick and snare like parallel, which is the DBX 160 on it.
Yep.
And I threw that on, and like I spent like 2 hours tweaking the default setting, and I was like, you know what, it just works better with just the default setting, and that's it. And just using it. And it's just one of those things that I don't bring it into the mix until like toward the end when the drums just start to get swallowed by everything. I'm like missing that attack, and it's like push up that parallel. There it is. Okay, I'm done. Print.
Nice.
That 160 thing rocks.
Yeah. And do you guys doing any sort of like automation for like printing mixes? Like have you guys like been checking out this program called Bounce Butler? Do you guys know about that one? No, it's this guy who I'll send out the link, but basically what it does, if you got, let's say, make a bunch of stem mixes, like drum stems, bass stems, whatsoever, and that's just mind-numbing work for guys, especially when working at home by ourselves, but what you can do is if you make a separate Pro Tools file, like a separate session file that has like just the drums soloed, and you call it, and you name that file like song A drum stem, and then in another one that's all the basses, and you have a separate session for each stem that you need to print. What Bounce Butler does, you can drag all those sessions into Bounce Butler, and it's basically a batch processor. It opens up all the sessions, runs them, prints it, closes it, opens up the next session, runs it, closes it, runs the next one. And then when it's done, it sends you a text that it's done. If it ran into any problems, it takes a screenshot of any error messages that may come up. And basically, I like for an entire album, like 50 plus, alternate mixes I got to run. I do it at the end of the album. I just throw all my stems and all my alt mixes into that thing and let it run. And I go out and have dinner with my wife. I come home, I go to bed, fall asleep. I wake up next morning, it's all printed and ready to go.
Well, it's wow.
And
I told you that automation was going to take all the good works from everybody.
Yeah, I know, but it's I think it charges you by like you pay like a flat fee and you get like 100 bounces, or you pay like a little bit more and you get 250 bounces. It works out to about like 15 cents a bounce or something like that. And it's cheaper than paying an assistant $15 an hour or whatever to print your mixes for you.
Wow. Well, I've been doing something very similar but completely different. Is this program called SoundFlow? Do you guys know about this?
Wait, no. I know of it. Yeah.
It's a scripting language that can reach inside Pro Tools and do pretty much anything you want. So I now have scripts that select the bottom track in my session, which is always my print track, duplicates the playlist, increments the numbers, selects the mix, bounces the mix, puts it back on the track, exports it, puts it on my Dropbox folder, and then saves the session. I've got other ones that will print stems. I can just tell it, take every single VCA in the session, select them all. It'll go through one by one, soloing, printing, naming, soloing, printing, naming, soloing, naming, export them all. But you can also, every single thing that's annoying in Pro Tools, you can now automate. So I've got like, if you're working on a song and you're the mixer, you're not supposed to be tuning vocals. But then like, oh my God, I have to do it. I just have to do it. So I've got a script that will go through all the tracks I've selected, drag the plugins out of the way to free up the first plugin spot, put in Melodyne, hit the transfer button, put in the next one, hit the transfer button, put them all in, then commit the track so it bounces the audio into Melodyne faster than real time.
Yep,
because that's the trick for committing. It bounces it however fast it can commit. Then it goes back, gets rid of all the committed audio and bullshit tracks, and you're there with all like 15 Melodynes, everything loaded in like minutes.
Amazing.
And you go to the bathroom while it's doing it.
By the way, isn't it about time that Pro Tools made it so you could take a plugin from the bottom and put it on the top and everything?
Well,
have everything shift at the same time.
Hello.
I am right in the middle of doing that with SoundFlow.
Right, I understand, but like you can do that with so many different, with all these shells they have now. Like, Apogee has a shell and all that. You could just move stuff around in there, no problem. Pro Tools.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't know about SoundFlow. There goes whatever free time I had.
SoundFlow is insane, and the guy that develops it is like we were talking about, because I wanted it to control, because I'm using a Stream Deck to trigger all the macros.
Yep.
And so those are all just icons. So I've got ones that'll send stuff to RX and open up the noise reduction stuff that I want, and another button just puts it back into Pro Tools and whatever. But I'm going to be doing more of the live streaming. And I thought, well, OBS, which is this great open source program that does all the video and overlaying and all this stuff. And I wanted to control that. And the Stream Deck is sort of made for it. But the way Stream Deck does it is really clunky. And I was talking to Christian about it, and like, it's going to happen. Like in days. Like, this guy is insane. Everybody should go check it out. You get a month free, and then it's like $10 for the software.
God damn it! I have been avoiding checking that out. Now I got to check it out.
There
goes like 2 weeks of just because there's another program I use called Controller Mate. I don't know if you know about that one. It basically takes any keyboard, like PS2 controller, anything, a mouse, anything that has buttons on it, and allows you to remap what any of those do within any plugin or any program that you're working on. So like I have it set up like, well, this is a long story, but I don't have a monitor. I don't have a monitor controller, okay, because I'm too cheap to buy one. Because my thing is like the most pure path for monitoring is straight out of your interface into your speakers, period. And when you add in a monitor controller, there's all that extra cabling and stuff. And I'm only doing stereo mixing, and I've got an 8-output interface. Why doesn't Pro Tools have a built-in monitoring switching system without, having to have an MTRX or whatever, MTX thing? So what I do is I come out of my stereo bus into a new bus that I call it monitor. Monitor feeds outputs 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. I have a master fader for 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and I have a plugin by a company Melda.
Yeah.
They have a utility plugin. Everything on that is MIDI controllable, and using M controller, I can send keystrokes from my QWERTY keyboard that will turn those plugins on and off via MIDI. So I basically have a virtual monitoring section that is completely controlled by my keyboard.
Well, SoundFlow will do all that stuff too.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is getting so nerdy. I love it.
And it'll control. I've got a script right now where I select any track in Pro Tools. I hit a button, then my Stream Deck shows me the 10 inserts that are already there. I hit whichever insert I want to put the thing on, and then it brings up a searchable window. So you don't have to mouse over and find the little chiclet, because my tracks are always in small mode. And I miss it all the time. I'm picking the wrong plugin slot, and you will lose your life to programming in SoundFlow, but it is insane how much it can do. And you can trigger stuff with anything. Yeah, it's nuts. Absolutely.
I'm buying
it.
I'm just not going to do this because I will stop doing everything other than this.
Yes.
You can be a total
I'm looking
geek.
at it right now. I think I hate you, Andrew.
If you want to be a real geek and go down the rabbit hole, but it's all macros. So like those scripts that I built as macros, just, what do I do next? So I select that pop-up menu and do this thing or whatever. And then it can turn it into a script so you can make it cooler and like deal with more errors. Like if you don't have your clips list showing, certain things don't work or whatever. It has changed my life.
I've been programming macros in the control app, the Pro Tools control app, that do things like that for me as well, like renaming tracks. Once I double click on something, I just reach over. Like whenever I RX a track, I always like to relabel it with RX in parentheses, so I know I've treated it, and like having to double click on it and backspace, 4 spaces, parentheses, RX.
Exactly.
I just reach over and double click it, hit that button, it's done.
So the bottom button right here, that takes the bottom track in any Pro Tools session and switches input, even if it's not on the screen. And I'm always through a stereo track.
Done. We're done. I'm buying it.
It's like a 4-line script. It's insane.
How much
I've
is
been
this?
eyeing that, but now that I know you're doing it, I have to fucking do it now.
It's $10 a month, I think. It's insane. It is so
amazing.
It's so good, and it's not just Pro Tools. It controls the shit out of Cubase.
Yep.
Anything that has an API, it can control. And so now what we're doing is we're going to start talking to other like plugin manufacturers to get deeper integration into RX and stuff like that. Because, yeah, it's crazy how good it is. I mean, I've got a macro that takes any tracks I got selected, routes it to a new routing folder, naming the bus whatever I tell it to do, reroutes, takes whatever sends were on the source tracks, copies them up to the folder. Like, it's just because that stuff is so repetitive. And if you're taking a session and you got to do something 10 times in a row, you start hating life and you don't want to mix.
You know, I have
a notepad. I have a notepad that I keep open all the time while I'm working. I'm like, when I'm sitting there and I'm mixing, I go, man, I got to automate that. I just make a note of it. And then that basically on a day off, I just sit there, with macro programs and keystrokes and the control app and faders and try to make it happen.
Yeah. I have a feeling SoundFlow is going to do everything all those other things do for you.
Yeah.
Combined.
You were saying,
No, I have my Pro Tools operator for 20 years on orchestral sessions. Kevin has written all his own scripts for this kind of stuff, where he does take sheets that look at the, at our start point and our end point and puts in all the information. It's pretty incredible, but I'm going to turn him on to this because
he'll love it.
He'll either love it or hate me. I don't quite know.
Just send it to me.
He'll love you. He'll love you because Simon Franklin, the composer.
Yeah, Simon. I love Simon.
He's migrating everything over into SoundFlow. Everything.
Yeah. He's a geek, though. He's a world-class geek. That guy.
He is. He makes me seem like a Luddite. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not.
What do you think we are here? Look at what we're talking about.
I know. Let's not talk about.
Maybe you might be right about that. I didn't
think about that.
Well, the thing is, you've got to do it. Like when I started mixing from home about 8 years ago, my wife started complaining. And my wife, I met my wife at the studio. She used to work at a soundstage in Nashville. She was an engineer there. She worked with me on a couple projects. And when I started working from home, she's like starting noticing. She's like, man, you used to be able to mix a song in 8 days, and now it takes you 8 hours, and now it takes you 2 days. What's the problem? I'm like, well, when I'm in a studio, I've got an assistant on a laptop next to me. He's prepping my next song. He's tuning vocals for me. He's arranging the session for me. And I come out of an 8-hour day, but there's actually 20 man hours that just happened.
Yeah.
So for me to do that, I have 20 linear hours to mix the song. So that's why it's taking me forever. So
get yourself TeamViewer and get your assistant working at their place in your computer.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I'm too cheap. I don't want to hire an assistant. So
I've reached a point where I'm like, I'm not doing. I have very little DSP or CPU space left in my brain. Whatever little I have to apply to actual mixing. Yep. So logistics have to be offloaded to somewhere. I'm willing to admit that.
I think Reed Shippen has a guy who VPNs into his computer at his studio and then does all his prints for him when he leaves.
Yeah.
It does it all remotely.
Well, that's what we do. I finish cues. I actually just commit the auxes at home. At my studio in Santa Monica, I print to a second rig, but at home I just have auxes, so I just commit them. And then she comes in and renames everything, puts it into the appropriate folder, uploads it to Aspera, and does all that.
Right, exactly. But anything to automate and make things easier.
Yes. Yeah. Well, because it keeps you creative. It's destroying to have to go and do technical stuff.
Honestly, that's the most mind-numbing stuff for me because I get stuck in that brain. I get stuck in the brain of, well, what if I do this and this and this and that? How do I name that? And I stop mixing. I just don't have time for it.
Well, that's what I do now. Is when I get an album project, I'll spend the first 3 days maybe just prepping 4 songs, whatever. Just because there's nothing worse than having to get a song to the point where you're ready to mix, and then have to dive into mixing because you just don't your brain is toast. But I kind of like prepping a session myself in a lot of ways because I get to examine what's there.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
But then
and make notes as I go along. That guitar part will probably sound good in this delay, and that vocal I'll probably do this. I make notes as I'm prepping. So that way I basically have everything on deck and ready to go.
But I've also got a bank of buttons on the Stream Deck for all the colors that I normally use. It makes the groups that I normally use. So even the prepping has become the stuff that was annoying, like selecting 6 tracks by dragging in the edit window because you want to color them the same. But then you got to go click on the track name to turn it back into tracks and not clips.
Yeah.
Then you got to go over to the color palette and click the right color. That's automated now. So it's like, done.
I do all that with track presets now. You know, I have like a
Right.
track preset for kick.
Track presets are awesome.
Kick inserts. So I just like, for example, I have like a kick preset, a snare
Right.
preset, and then I have another preset.
We
that
do the
says
same
drums,
thing.
Other. And
Track
when
presets are awesome.
When I click it and I right click it, it routes it, it colors it. It you know.
Yeah,
But the one thing it doesn't do, is take it out of its previously assigned group. It puts it into its new previously assigned group, but you still have to, after you're done, go back in and
No, I'll tell you what. This is the secret for creating track presets. If you have a template that you use all the time,
yeah,
open it. Like if you want to make, for example, a kick drum preset, open up your template, make a new track, set it up as your kick drum, assign the group and everything, store it as a preset, and then delete the track. And now delete the grouping and everything, and then make a new track. And just always make your presets within your template session. That way, everything. Otherwise, you wind up getting like
we do that. We do that, but it gets hard. It gets harder on some of the film stuff because I have to, because I'm dealing with stems. So I find that I have a guitar part that's on the guitar stem, but it's actually a solo. Now I have to move it to the solo stem. Well, I have to just move it in place and then change the track.
Well, but that's exactly what I'm talking about. So you've got like those things, but it's all the stuff around the thing that you still have to do manually. And that's where something like SoundFlow, recalling the track preset, that's the easy part of the script. It's all the little crap before and after to make sure it's not double.
Absolutely. I love
when
it.
that's automated, then you don't have to think anymore. And it's
beautiful.
I mean, it makes me so happy to hit these.
Anything that makes you happy is good.
God,
You deserve to be happy, Andrew.
Thanks, Alan.
Absolutely love it. This is great. So there's a big groundbreaking thing for today. SoundFlow. I'm going to call you, Andrew, just so you know.
SoundFlow. And if you don't want to get too deep, check out Bounce Butler too.
Yeah, Bounce Butler looks good too.
It's already set up for that.
But the thing though.
It's on version 1 right now, but the guy who writes it answers emails really, really quickly. And I'm sure his name is Chris Graham. He's a mastering engineer. And I'm sure if all you guys like shot him an email, he'll probably just copy you into the beta or whatever.
The thing is, there's one thing though, and I'm gonna sound like an asshole, but I'm French, so it's my birthright. Yep. I have a team of guys here at Flux, and right now they're out of work, and so. And
that's honorable.
It's like it puts the finger on the cost of automation. Right now they're not out of work because of automation, but eventually they will be out of work because of automation. So I personally just made a point of I took on a crazy amount of songs, and I've basically, because I know I'm going to be able to hire them and pay them to do a bunch of stuff for me, prep them, do the stems.
I do the same thing.
So and so it's like I love the SoundFlow stuff, and I'm going to use it for things like for me at this point, I'm going to use it for doing that Melodyne trick where you can get to Melodyne in time because it's great. But the bouncing thing also, the other thing is I have this human being named Tom who's a total badass, and I know that if he does my stems, it's going to cost me money, and the label will not pay for them, and then they will change their mind and ask for another set of stems and everything. But I don't have to check him.
Right.
I know that he's going to listen to it, and if there's a problem, he's going to call and say, "Are you sure you meant that?" And so this human thing is important. The team thing is important, and
absolutely
sure I'm taking care of those people is important. I love automation when it's going to lower my blood pressure. But if it's gonna take this dude's gig away, I can't do it.
We have a hierarchy with usually on a big movie it takes me a couple of assistants to get the work done. I have the person setting up each cue, and once we build the template, and then I always bring in the young person, the guy or woman, and their first job, because I want them to think musically right off the bat, is timing and editing. So they have to go in there and make the percussion work with the live percussion work with the cue, the way it's sitting and stuff, and figure out how to do that in a musical way. And I always give them a shot to fuck it up. And then I show them the right way to do it. And then you get to see who's got music in their veins and who doesn't. It's really the way I like to work. But I'm with you, Fab. I mean, I was on a seminar with Berkeley yesterday, right? And there were 20 hungry kids on there. all wanting to know what they're going to do when they get out of school, and we got to keep these kids going. It's important.
Also, it's good to pass down the
absolutely
knowledge, and this is actually why Puremix got started. My partner Guillaume, it was his idea, it wasn't my idea. Actually, the first time he told me he wanted to do something, and I said, nah, I'm not interested. But he's stubborn. It was started because there was we looked at the fact that at least for music, stereo, like pure album mixing, this was almost 10 years ago. You couldn't get an assistant gig. There were 10 assistant gigs available worldwide per year. And now how do you learn? People used to learn by watching other people do, right? I didn't get that chance. So Guillaume was like, look, we can create this thing where people are going to be able to learn the way it used to be by watching other people do. And I thought that was cool. So that's why Puremix got started. It also got started for me to cut down on my tech support calls every day. I was like, if I answer all the questions that I get every day, and I used to get so many calls, if I answer that in video, then I can just send people to the video, then I don't have to answer the calls. And that was the other selfish motivation for starting Puremix. We're glad we did. We're going to hit 300,000 members soon. So that's nice. But that was
great. Congratulations.
Puremix. Yeah, that's fun. It's been an interesting 10 years, that's for sure.
The only problem with really, really good assistant engineers is that they go on to become really good engineers, and you train a whole other one to come in.
And I take that into account. I figure I got 2 years.
Yeah,
I get to keep someone for about 2 years. The first 6 months is a waste. Okay.
Yep.
I absolutely get nothing out of them for the first 6 months that doesn't need to be fixed. Then if I'm lucky enough, I get into the zone where they're rocking, and I get about 18 months before they end up moving on to my last one before Eva went to work for one of my composers, and now Eva's been with me for about 2 years. I think she's going to hang for a while. And she's great, and I keep her as long as she wants to stay. But I also understand if it's time for her to move on.
One of my guys here, John, Frank Ocean came last year because I have a CSAD that works, so that makes me a very special human being. So Frank Ocean rented out my room for 2 weeks, and we, in our team, the person who was the most compatible with Frank Ocean and how those sessions go was John. So John got the gig to be the assistant on those sessions. And so the sessions went great. And then Frank kept coming back and John kept being on the session. And after a month of that, Frank Ocean did what old superstars do, moved on to another studio and stuff, and took John with him.
Yep.
Yeah.
And John called and said, hey, Frank called and he wants me to go to England for a month. I said, go. Yeah. That's what you're here for. It's going to suck. Like everybody else on the team is going to get pissed because we're going to have to pick up your shifts. It's going to make life complicated. And they all have their lives and everything is arranged around everything. But that is the whole point. That's why he's been there for so long. That's why we train him. That's why we took care of him. Now he's soared. He went, he did that, and then he came back when he was done. But
there is the other side to that though. And I also have had the experience where I've had a guy work with me and then I've helped them get a project and they decide to go on their own and then they go with I can give you the Alan Meyerson experience without the Alan Meyerson cost. And that has happened. I'm not going to lie.
That's okay. But
you know what I'm talking about, brother.
You don't care. You're Alan Meyerson. That's the thing. It's just
well, I do care. I mean, I care just because, first of all, for better or for worse, I'm the only one that can do me.
Exactly.
That's not the best or the worst. I don't, I personally, I'd rather have Steve Genewick than Alan Meyerson, but that's just me. But don't go around like using my name and then borrowing my gear and doing your get. It's like, don't do that.
Yeah, but the people who are going to hire you are people who you probably don't want to work with anyway.
Steve Genewick says, I need a haircut. Genewick, you look just fine the way you are. And you're still my favorite engineer in LA at the moment. That's only because Andrew left.
You're not supposed to say that part out loud.
All right. Guys, we are about an hour over time. And it's beautiful. I really appreciate you guys coming in and being open and sharing, your experience and your information, and for completely hijacking Andrew's hour.
Sorry, Andrew.
Oh, shit. Sorry, Andrew.
No, go. All right, it's great, man. I
awesome.
wanted to hear you guys talk.
This is great.
What do you
By the way, you guys want to see what a 200-track session looks like with folders?
Oh,
Yeah. Oh, dude, I'm doing one right now. How awesome is it?
Oh, I have to upgrade.
I got 11 pathways on a 200-track session.
Amazing. Yeah. I have to upgrade. I haven't upgraded. Can you believe that? It just hasn't been time.
I just did it. It's fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll look into the folder. All right. So Mark is logged out, so the 4 of us can be on. So I'm going to do
something. I missed it. I don't know what he was. I don't know what he was saying.
Come again?
Chris was just saying something. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to say I wanted to get together with you and talk about Mono Valley before you got there. I spent about a year. There making a Super Furry Animals record, and
right.
Back when the TSM was still in there and everything was falling apart, and they just handed me the keys and say, "See you in a month."
Oh God! Wow, pre-SSL, yeah. That's
It was the Trident TSM was in there.
Yeah.
Oh God, what a nightmare!
No, it's a fantastic place now, but unfortunately, it's done. So
yeah, that's a shame, because I love that back room for drums. It
just
sounded phenomenal. It just sounded phenomenal. But anyway, on an up note.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you guys for coming and taking some of your afternoon to geek out.
We got to 2.5 questions, so that's pretty good.
That's good for 2 hours of geekery. So it's question hour, no speeding. So thank you very much. Thanks you all for watching. Tomorrow afternoon, Luca Petrolesi is going to mix a song live in real time on Studio One. On Monday, Andrew will talk to awesome people. This Monday, it's going to be Greg Wells, and
more importantly, Nina Woodford Wells, his talented wife.
Okay. On Tuesday, our favorite 2 stereo beards, Reed Chippen and Vance Powell, are going to be interviewing Chris Athens.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
That'll be
epic. It shall be epic. I can't forget. I know that next Friday, Mick Gazarski is going to mix live on camera in Pro Tools. I'm interviewing George Stein on Wednesday on 6 Geeks Apart. George Stein is a prominent New York music lawyer, and we're going to do a Q&A on what you need to know about music business. What's a publisher? What's a label? What's a manager? What's a contract? How does it work? George was also Jeff Buckley's manager, and he's been part of the New York scene for the longest time, and is wonderful, and he's giving his time to share this information with us, which is great. And then there's one more. Let me open this fantastic piece of software called Asana. It's called Asana, but I like to call it Asana. And I forgot this tiny detail. Next Thursday, we'll have David Crosby on at 2:30 to discuss the record we made together here, if you listen, and also Lighthouse. So next Thursday, David Crosby. Voila, that's the schedule for next week. Thank you so much, everyone. And not bad. See you here tomorrow.
Yep.
Ciao, everyone.
Bye.
Ciao.
How do I get out?